So we're going to do it in English. Maybe our role is to bring a bit the world in, and not only a French debate. So my role here, and my difficult role, is to keep it to 25 minutes. But I count on a former 4-star general to keep the discipline. And then, Tom, you're a former 4-star general, chief of staff of the Dutch Armed Force. To make it brief, may I remind you that everybody has a QR code with the bio in their programs, so that's easier to avoid losing too many minutes. And Marie-Claire, yes, she has an experience in a lot of French cabinets, ministers, and also prime ministers. You can, of course, check it in the bio. And now she's the director and in charge of sustainability for a luxury group like Kering. So maybe let's kick off the discussion by a broader question and think about the urgency of the climate crisis, and if we are really, as a society, Romain mentioned your book where you look not only at military but a broader scope. Are businesses, governments, companies, people are really aware of the urgency? Are we really aware that the cost of inaction is greater than the cost of acting today? So that's a bit, do we have the tools? So maybe, because we're gentlemen, I would ask Marie-Claire to start, and then maybe you can complement. Thank you.
Okay. D'abord, un bonjour à toutes et à tous, et ravi d'être là ce matin, puisque avec Kering, nous accompagnons en fait le cercle et le forum depuis sa création. Donc maintenant, we will switch in English with the French accent, and perhaps we will say a few words in Italian. So I think we are quite global now. So to answer your question, Umberto, I think if we speak about industries and also luxury and fashion sector, but also the society, it was mentioning from the beginning, people are more and more aware about climate change, but also loss of biodiversity, resource scarcity. It's true. It's also true because when you see what is happening all over the world, and I take for you the example of Italy, in 2024, more than 350 big events linked with climate change, floods, but also wave of hot and many things happen. So now it's not only data, it's not only figures, but it's also something that you can see on reality. So people are aware. Another way to say that the society is aware about what is happening, and I already told that last year, it's about financial markets. Financial markets are more and more aware about the fact that if you don't tackle the issue and mention about climate change, biodiversity, for example, also water scarcity, you won't be able not only to grow your business, but only to continue your business. So I think people are today more and more aware, and we can say that unfortunately, with also what happened this summer, fires nearly all over the world, not only in France, people are making more and more the link between climate change and what is happening around them. After, do we have the tool? I think the tool, we have the tools to start, not perhaps to change the entire paradigm, but at least really to implement concrete action on the ground. And where sometimes I am a little bit frustrated, it's about the fact that now the diagnosis, it's quite clear. Even if when we are speaking about climate change, it's a global public good, so it's great to have actions in France, but if we are not acting at the global level, we won't change at all anything, because of course, and I was a civil servant before, so I know how much it's important to act in France, but above all for the companies, not only, I will say, the listed companies like the CAC 40, but also the SMEs, as soon as you have a global footprint, you have really to pay attention to have also actions everywhere, because without that, we won't change the paradigm and we won't tackle the issue. So we have the tools to measure our impact. We have the tools, for example, with the SBTI to have a clear roadmap for climate change. Now we have the SBTN, so we have methodology. So when I listen people saying, well, biodiversity, it's quite complex, we don't know exactly what to do. I agree, we don't know everything in details, but we know already enough to act on the ground. And I think the most important challenges as company and also as society we have, it's really to put at scale and to speed, because now we don't have the time. So perhaps the narrative is not good. Perhaps we have to change to speak. Perhaps people who are involved for many, many years in this topic, we are not enough clear, or we don't know how to involve people. But now the reality is there. So I think it's really the time to act. And unfortunately, people, I think, and also us as a company, we do our best, but it's true that it's challenging to change the business model. And today, it's not only to make, and I will stop there, it's not enough to make some incremental progresses. It's really, as company, to say we will change our business model. And of course, it's quite challenging.
Thank you. Merci. Très intéressant. Please, Tom, bring your perspective in.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, my apologies for being the only not French-speaking person in this room. I hope you can follow my Dutch English. I agree with everything Marie-Claire said. I think awareness is growing, we have more and more tools, but there still is a gap, especially when we look at it from an international perspective. There is a gap between knowing and acting. There is a gap between recognizing the importance and feeling the urgency. We sign agreements, we set goals, but we find it very hard to operationalize them. And we need to realize, and I think we all experience it, that we are entering a new and very grim era. An era of growing shortages, of climate disruption, and of increasing strategic competition, where dependencies on all kinds of resources are being weaponized and turned into vulnerabilities. And climate change acts as an accelerator of all of this. So delaying action is no longer an option. To me, climate change is absolutely not a green hobby. It's not a left-wing political theme. It is much more than an ecological issue. To me, it's also about security, about stability, and it is also a matter of national security that cuts across all sectors. And as a soldier, I have learned the price of conflicts. I have learned the cost of inaction. It will be far greater than the cost of action today. Delays will multiply risks, like disrupted supply chains, mass migration, sparkling extremism, and instability spilling into Europe. Now the good news is, as Marie-Claire said, we have the tools, we have the knowledge, we have the foresight, we know what's happening. It gives us a responsibility to act and not look the other way or postpone. However, this does require leadership. Let me give you, and I'll finish with that, a small example from my own country. In 1953, after the Second World War, we had a major flooding, and half of our population lives below the sea level. We had a major flooding in the south of our country. It was in poor times. We were rebuilding the country. We had a very poor economy. We had no money. So it was very tempting for the politicians to just fix the dikes and stop there. But they decided differently. They decided to put additional money into building a future-proof defense system called the Delta Works. And now, 3 generations later, we are very grateful that they made that choice. And that's the kind of leadership that we need today. That's the kind of leadership that we need, not only on the political level, but also in our companies and in other organizations. And I think, I hope that our children will thank us for acting and not curse us for not acting. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's just that I'm mindful of time, and we will come to resilience of infrastructure and supply chain, which I think is a key question. Maybe just to continue with you, could you explain a bit, because I know you in your book, but in general you've looked beyond just military. Could you explain a bit, the implication of climate crisis, climate change, with regard geopolitical shifts, regional multiplier, maybe local disaster, and the role of the military, and also in it? If you could bring in 3, 4 minutes that, and then we'll switch. It's a difficult job.
It is, yeah. It's a big picture. I've been involved in more than 20 crisis areas around the world, and I saw one reoccurring thing, and that was climate stress and the impact that climate is having on security in all of those areas. I saw how it created local tensions, how scarcities were weaponized by local power brokers, and how it drove people into the hands of criminality and extremism. And too often we are just fighting the symptoms without addressing the root cause. And that's why I now lead a global network of security experts and research institutes looking at the climate security connection. Our mission is simple: develop knowledge and understanding, build awareness, and help design solutions. Now, how does it affect our security? It affects our security on different levels. On a global level, it is a geopolitical game changer. Let me just give you one example: the Arctic area. Melting ice. The melting of ice opens a completely new arena around resources. It also opens new trade routes from China to Europe. It gives Russia a new power position in the north. Russia is already allocating naval forces, nuclear forces to the north, and will have direct access to both oceans. An enormous game changer just by melting ice. And it goes beyond the Arctic. Climate stress also creates more scarcities on water, food, rare minerals, and global competition is now toughening, as we feel every day. Dependencies become vulnerabilities. So climate change does not bring the world together, it risks driving nations apart. Now, at the regional level, climate change acts as a very powerful risk multiplier. Last year, I had the opportunity to travel through Bangladesh, Iraq, and Somalia for the filming of my book. And I saw a same pattern repeating itself. Climate extremes forcing people into poverty, taking away their perspective of life. In, for instance, Somalia, the last 5 years, they only had 2 rain seasons. 3 years without rain in an agricultural country. Just imagine the impact. And this is just one example. Millions of people are pushed into rapidly growing cities. Cities that are already overstretched and unstable and cannot provide jobs or opportunities. And this creates a generation of young people growing up in despair, frustrated, disconnected, and vulnerable, without opportunities. And they are forced into desperate choices. Some want to migrate, move away from the problems. Others join criminal organizations. Others join extremist organizations. And it gives a lot of instability in those countries. We have a lot of ticking time bombs at the doorstep of Europe. And this shows that climate stress is not a distant problem. It is reshaping today's security landscape at every level. It does not create conflicts at its own, but it accelerates. It accelerates and magnifies existing tensions. And the last level is more the local level. Also here in France, in Europe, we feel the impacts of a changing climate. Also our cities, our critical infrastructures are being hit by floods, by storms, by heat waves, and by droughts. Ports, transportation hubs, energy grids, you name it. Supply chains They are the nerve systems of our societies, of our economies. If they break down, instability spreads quickly, as we saw during COVID and as we witness in the war in Ukraine. Now, what roles can the armed forces play? And I will be brief on this. They cannot solve this problem by themselves. This is not a military problem, but they can be a partner. They can be part of, and they need to be part of the solution. What they can do is they can help protect critical infrastructure against these impacts. They can support disaster relief. They can provide foresight and early warning on the impacts of climate change coming to us. I think many of these roles still need to be developed. Thank you.
Thank you, General. And Marie-Claire, I think we can come to resilience of infrastructure, supply chains, and I'm curious, and I'm sure everybody is, how does a company like yours, mitigates these risks, and how does it manage and how does it plan this kind of thing? And on flooding, I was just remembering Valencia very recently. So maybe you can give us your perspective from the company.
Perhaps one comment, and I will do very short for Kering, because I think what you said, it's really key. And perhaps we don't speak enough to the society about the link, how much climate change, how much environmental issue can affect the stability all over the world. Because we see, and you know, of course, better than me, conflicts with armies all over the world, and after we put other reasons, but most of the time it's people to have access to water, and based on that you have what is happening all over the world. So to speak about the resilience of the supply chain for a luxury company in comparison with what we said before, it's a little bit tough.
You have 5 minutes.
But I will say only two words. Perhaps the first, it's also about the fact that even for a luxury company, what I would like is to be sure, I was speaking about financial markets, but also the fact that financial markets and above all investors award companies which are taking into account this kind of action. Because of course we have your aspect, but you have also the fact that for a listed company and more globally, financial markets are key. So they need also to recognize if we want the company to put at scale. Very quickly at Kering, people are thinking about fashion shows. They are thinking about luxury products. And I would like to say hello to my colleague from Hermès. I have seen in the audience, so I hope you will agree with me. It's very important. But beyond this kind of products, fashion shows, you have raw materials. So it's about cotton, it's about leather, it's about wool. And without that, you won't be able to continue to develop your business. Cashmere, for example, today we see really the impacts of climate change on the quality and on the volume of cashmere. So what we are doing very concretely, for example, we took the commitment to transform one conventional hectares of agriculture to regenerative agricultures. We want, for example, to reduce our water consumption. So we have specific target. I won't go into details, but it's to say in Arno Basin, in Italy, where we have, I will say, many of our tanneries, we want to reduce by 21% our consumption of water by 2030. So to do that, of course, we use regenerative raw materials. We want to reduce by 40% in absolute value, Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, our greenhouse gas emission by 2035. So to that, we need innovation. We are using mycelium as an alternative raw material. So we have many actions, very concrete. But I think the most important is what you said, General. It's about the fact that it's leadership. So we have to be sure that in the company, even if the times are tough, because also for some luxury companies, the times are tough, you have to continue to put sustainability at the heart of the strategy. Even if some countries, and Romain was mentioning, perhaps climate change and many topics are challenged, but you have to be sure that it's really in your value, it's in your DNA, and so you have a clear vision and you will continue to implement, and it's what we try to do inside Kering with a collective approach. It was mentioning this morning, without working not only between peers, like we are doing with Hermès, with Chanel, and many also Italian companies, but also externally. And when we think about leather, it's a co-product, it's a byproduct of the meat industry. So we need also to work, as you can understand, with other industry. It's very key. If we want to contribute, we will be very humble to change the paradigm.
Thank you, Marie-Claire. We have 1 minute, 21 seconds. I had another half an hour, but it doesn't matter. Maybe, and by the way, on luxury, I just want to remain our little god, Giorgio Armani, which isn't with us anymore. And in Italy, we lost somebody, but the whole family. Maybe just on how can the military quickly, like, if you could, how can they come in protecting resilience and supply chain? Maybe you could say a few words on how the military, how you see the role of your sector.
I think, yeah, of course we can practically help, we can protect nodes, we can provide support when communication systems or other systems are failing. So there are several ways of doing this, but I think we need to realize that addressing climate change and dealing with sustainability is a strategic necessity. It's about future-proofing your company and your organization. It's not just about compliance, it's not just about following the rules. And we need to join forces in that. And that takes leadership that looks further down the road. We need to get ahead of the game. Just building resilience is not enough to solve the problem. We can fight fires, but that doesn't prevent a catastrophe for tomorrow from happening. So we need also to invest in long-term solutions, and the long-term solutions are in reducing our footprint, becoming more self-sufficient on resources, so that we can reduce also the vulnerable dependencies that we talked about. This is a matter of survival also for companies.
Merci, thank you. We're 10 seconds late, apologies. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you.